People love to joke that Australia is the most dangerous place on Earth. Bigger spiders, deadlier snakes, animals that look like they were designed by nature on a bad day. And the truth is, that reputation isn't exaggerated at all. Australia is home to an absurd number of venomous species, more than almost any other country on the planet. It contains 20 of the 25 deadliest snakes in the world, including every single one of the top 11. It's one of the only places on Earth where a bird, the cassowary, has a documented history of killing humans. Add to that saltwater crocodiles, great white sharks, box jellyfish, funnel web spiders, insects large enough to trigger primal fear, and wildfires so massive they can be seen from space, and it becomes clear why Australia has earned the nickname the Land of Nope. But here's the part most people don't realize. As dangerous as Australia feels today, this version of the continent is actually the calm one. Modern Australia is a toned-down, watered-down edition of what it used to be. Long before cities, roads, or even written history, Australia was something far more hostile. Not during the age of dinosaurs, but tens of thousands of years later, when humans first arrived. Around 50,000 years ago, Australia reached a peak of biological chaos, and that moment in time just happened to coincide with the arrival of the first humans. It was, without question, the worst possible timing. Back then, Australia was ruled not by mammals, but by reptiles. Massive, aggressive, highly specialized reptilian predators dominated the land, the rivers, and the shadows. For any early human stepping onto this continent for the first time, it would have immediately felt wrong. The rules of nature they knew from Africa and Asia didn't apply here. The predators were unfamiliar, the prey was oversized, and almost everything was built to kill efficiently. One of the most terrifying examples of this was a creature that looks almost fictional at first glance. A crocodile that didn't wade in rivers. A crocodile that chased prey on land. This animal was called quinkana, and unlike modern crocodiles, it was fully adapted to a terrestrial lifestyle. This wasn't a crocodile-shaped reptile or a distant relative. Quinkana was a true crocodilian, but one that evolved long legs, a raised posture, and the ability to move comfortably across solid ground. Its legs were unusually long for a crocodilian, allowing its body to stay elevated above the terrain. Its toes were hoof-like, built for traction rather than swimming. Its tail, unlike modern crocodiles, was flattened and poorly suited for propulsion in water. Everything about its body pointed to a life spent hunting on land. And the most disturbing feature of all was its teeth. Instead of the conical, gripping teeth of modern crocodiles, quinkana possessed blade-like, serrated teeth designed for slicing flesh. These teeth, known as xiphodont teeth, are more commonly associated with meat-eating dinosaurs. Each bite wasn't meant to drown prey or hold it in place. It was meant to cut it open. Most adult quinkana individuals measured around 3 meters or 10 feet in length and weighed roughly 200 kilograms. That already made them comparable to a modern American alligator. But fossil evidence suggests that some individuals grew far larger, potentially reaching lengths of 6 meters or 20 feet. At that size, quinkana would have been one of the dominant predators on the continent, capable of killing large mammals and occasionally humans. Escaping one wouldn't have been easy, and jumping into water may not have saved you either. Although quinkana was primarily terrestrial, there is evidence that it retained some swimming ability. So whether on land or near water, this crocodile remained a threat. And yet, as terrifying as it sounds, quinkana wasn't even the largest reptilian predator roaming ancient Australia. That title belongs to Megalania. For many years, it was known simply as Megalania, a name that translates roughly to Great Roamer. Today, scientists classify it as Varanus priscus, meaning it was actually a gigantic species of monitor lizard. Despite the name change, Megalania is still commonly used because it perfectly captures what this animal was. A roaming, land-based apex predator of unbelievable size. Even the most conservative estimates place Megalania at over 3.5 meters, or 11 feet, long, with a weight of around 150 kilograms. That alone would make it larger than any monitor lizard alive today. But many scientists believe these estimates are on the low end. Larger individuals may have exceeded 500 kilograms, and some controversial reconstructions suggest extreme specimens approaching 8 meters or 26 feet in length. Even if those upper estimates are exaggerated, Megalania was unquestionably the largest terrestrial lizard to ever exist. Its body was thick and heavily built, far more robust than modern monitor lizards. Its limbs were powerful, equipped with sharp claws capable of gripping and tearing. Its teeth were long, curved, and serrated, ideal for holding on to struggling prey. And like all modern monitor lizards, Megalania likely possessed venom. Monitor lizard venom isn't designed for instant kills. Instead, it works as an anticoagulant, preventing blood from clotting. A single bite could cause massive blood loss, shock, and infection. The Komodo dragon, Megalania's closest living relative, uses a terrifying hunting strategy. It bites its prey, then backs off, allowing venom, blood loss, and infection to weaken the victim over time. Many paleontologists believe Megalania used the same method. That means even if you escaped the initial attack, survival wasn't guaranteed. You might bleed out hours later, far from the predator, alone and helpless. But even Megalania had competition. Slithering through ancient Australia was a massive snake known as Wanambi. Unlike most modern giant snakes, Wanambi belonged to an extinct family of primitive serpents with stiff jaws and limited skull flexibility. It couldn't unhinge its jaws wide enough to swallow large prey whole, and that limitation made it far more disturbing. Wanambi reached lengths of up to 6 meters or 20 feet, rivaling large pythons. It likely hunted near water sources, ambushing prey and constricting them with overwhelming strength. But after killing its prey, instead of swallowing it whole, Wanambi would tear chunks of flesh from the carcass using its sharp teeth and muscular body. In some cases, it may have disemboweled prey entirely. This method of feeding would have been slow, violent, and horrifying to witness. And it may have been a more common cause of death for early humans than attacks from Megalania or Quincana. Even today, in some indigenous communities around the world, large constrictor snakes are a significant threat to human life. In ancient Australia, that danger was magnified. With so many reptilian predators dominating the landscape, it's reasonable to wonder how mammals survived at all. The answer is simple. The mammals were just as dangerous. The most infamous of these was Thylacoleo, often called the marsupial lion. Despite the name, it wasn't a lion and wasn't even closely related to cats. Its closest living relatives are koalas and wombats, but evolution turned this herbivore lineage into one of the most efficient mammalian predators to ever exist. Thylacoleo was the largest mammalian carnivore ever to live in Australia. Average individuals were about the size of a large wild boar, while the biggest specimens rivaled female lions and tigers in mass. What made it truly terrifying was its bite. Pound for pound, Thylacoleo had the strongest bite force of any known mammal. Its skull was reinforced with massive muscles, allowing it to generate crushing power far beyond what its size would suggest. Its teeth were unlike those of any modern predator. Instead of long canines, it had enlarged incisors that functioned like stabbing blades. Behind them were enormous premolars shaped like shears. When Thylacoleo bit into prey, the incisors would pierce deep into flesh, while the premolars sliced through arteries, windpipes, and even spinal cords. Researchers believe it could kill large prey in under a minute, far faster than African lions, which often take 15 minutes or more to suffocate their victims. If that wasn't enough, Thylacoleo had retractable claws on semi-opposable thumbs, giving it exceptional control during attacks. These claws were likely used to grip prey, deliver fatal slashes, and even climb trees. Evidence suggests Thylacoleo may have dragged kills into trees or caves, much like modern leopards. It was a predator perfectly adapted for ambush, strength, and efficiency. And even the herbivores of ancient Australia were anything but harmless. Diprotodon, the largest marsupial to ever exist, resembled a gigantic wombat. Some individuals weighed nearly 4 tons, comparable to a modern Asian elephant. Hunting one would have been incredibly dangerous, not only because of its size, but because it had a powerful bite capable of breaking bones. A single defensive bite could easily cripple or kill a human. Birds, too, were oversized. Genyornis, a member of the thunderbird family, stood over 6 feet tall and weighed more than 200 kilograms. Though herbivorous, its size, beak, and claws made it a dangerous animal to provoke. And all of this existed in a land plagued by extreme droughts, massive wildfires, and scarce resources. Yet despite every possible disadvantage, humans survived. Not only did they survive, but they thrived. Archaeological evidence suggests that early Australians hunted many of these megafauna species. Through intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability, humans became the most dangerous animals on the continent. In a land filled with monsters, we were the species that endured. That line sounds like an ending, but in reality, it's where the real nightmare begins. Because surviving in ancient Australia didn't mean peace, safety, or stability. It meant constant awareness. It meant waking up every single day, knowing that the land around you was actively hostile. Picture the first human standing on an unfamiliar shoreline as the sun dropped low, watching a continent stretch endlessly inland, silent and unreadable. The trees didn't look right. The animals didn't sound familiar. Even the air felt heavy, as if the land itself was watching. As they moved inland, the signs would start appearing. Massive footprints pressed deep into wet soil, drag marks cutting through grass, bones scattered in unnatural patterns, cracked open, stripped clean, left behind as warnings. In places like this, predators don't announce themselves. You don't see them coming, you sense them. Birds suddenly go quiet. Insects vanish. The wind shifts, carrying a smell that doesn't belong. That's when fear sets in, not as panic, but as instinct. Australia at night would have felt like another world entirely. Without artificial light, darkness didn't fade gradually. It slammed shut. Firelight barely pushed back the black wall of bush beyond the camp. Every snap of a branch, every rustle in tall grass forced a choice. Ignore it and risk death, or react and reveal your position. Early humans wouldn't have slept deeply. They slept in fragments, rotating watch duties, eyes scanning shadows more than resting. Because here, deep sleep meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant becoming part of the food chain. Somewhere beyond the firelight, something massive could be moving slowly, deliberately, not rushing, not making noise. Quincana didn't need to sprint. It waited for isolation. Megalania didn't need a prolonged fight. One bite was enough, followed by patience. Wanambi didn't chase at all. It waited near water, near reeds, near the places humans had no choice but to visit. The most dangerous predators weren't the loud ones. They were the ones that blended perfectly into the land, and the landscape itself worked against human survival. Ancient Australia was built like a trap. Water was rare, and where water existed, death followed. Every creek, every billabong, every muddy edge was a convergence point for prey and predator alike. Drought tightened the noose further, forcing animals and humans into predictable paths. And predictability is what predators exploit. You can imagine a human group pausing at the edge of water at dusk, knowing they needed it, but also knowing that stepping forward could be fatal. Fire became more than warmth. It became a shield, a signal, and a weapon. Flames created light, noise, smoke, confusion. They disrupted ambush hunters and pushed predators back, but they also drew attention. In a land this dangerous, even protection carried risk. Survival demanded rules. Never walk alone. Never approach water blindly. Never camp near dense reeds. Never ignore silence. Never assume size means safety. And even with rules, people still died. That is the truth of early Australia. Human arrival wasn't a heroic conquest. It was a brutal negotiation with a continent that killed without hesitation. But over time, humans learned patterns. They learned fear, and they learned that intelligence, cooperation, and planning could turn terror into strategy. Because in a land ruled by monsters, survival wasn't about being the strongest, it was about being the smartest. As humans spent more time on this continent, fear slowly transformed into understanding. Patterns began to emerge. Predators weren't random forces of chaos. They followed rules, territories, and routines. Megalania favored open woodland and hunting paths used by large herbivores. Quincana preferred broken terrain, near water crossings where footing was uncertain. Wanambi stayed close to reeds, shadows, and stillness. Learning this took generations, and it cost lives. But knowledge became the most powerful survival tool humans possessed. Camps were no longer placed by convenience, but by calculation. High ground became sacred. Visibility mattered more than comfort. Fires were arranged not just for warmth, but to create controlled sight lines into the darkness. Even movement changed. Groups learned to travel during specific hours, to avoid dusk and dawn when predators were most active. Children were kept close. Elders became living libraries, carrying stories that weren't myths, but survival manuals disguised as warnings. These stories taught where not to walk, what sounds meant danger, and which animals demanded absolute respect. And slowly, something remarkable began to happen. Humans stopped reacting to Australia. They started anticipating it. Hunting strategies evolved. Rather than facing megafauna directly, humans learned to exhaust them, isolate them, and drive them into unfavorable terrain. Fire was used to reshape the land itself, clearing vegetation, exposing predators, and forcing animals into predictable movement corridors. This wasn't domination through strength, it was domination through planning. Even creatures as massive as Diprotodon became vulnerable when cut off from water or forced into heat stress. Over time, the balance shifted. Predators that once ruled unchallenged now faced an opponent that worked as a unit, communicated complex ideas, and adapted faster than biology could keep up. This didn't mean humans were fearless. Fear never disappeared. If anything, it became sharper, more focused. But fear stopped being paralyzing and started becoming useful. It guided decisions, it shaped culture, it dictated movement, and in a land where one mistake meant death, fear became an ally. The environment itself began to change as well. Controlled burns altered ecosystems, grasslands expanded, forest edges shifted. These changes didn't just affect prey animals. They disrupted ambush predators that relied on cover and surprise. Megalania couldn't vanish as easily in open terrain. Quincana lost ideal hunting quarters. Wanambi found fewer concealed water approaches. Slowly, unintentionally, humans began dismantling the advantages that made these creatures so deadly. It wasn't quick, it wasn't clean, but it was effective. And this is where the story of ancient Australia takes a darker turn. Because when apex predators lose their edge, extinction becomes a possibility. Not overnight, but generation by generation. Fewer successful hunts, more competition, less food, stress, decline. The monsters didn't disappear because they were weak. They disappeared because the world they evolved for no longer existed. And at the center of that transformation stood humans, small, fragile, physically unimpressive, yet capable of reshaping an entire continent without ever intending to. By the time the megafauna realized the rules had changed, it was already too late.